is coming to you from the beautiful metaverse. And I apologize for being slightly late, but there was some issue with connection the first time. But I don't think we're very late. So I want to welcome everyone who's joining us today. I hope to see you in the chat room. And as we have been doing, we will have a lovely conversation between ourselves. Those of you who were watching yesterday will have seen my interview with Jason Mankey. I think it was a very good interview. I certainly enjoyed it. Last week we had Belladonna Laveau from the ATC. And one of the things that I've most enjoyed about these interviews is the different focus of the different guests. And I hope that that will continue and that we will see the different ways in which the leadership of our community are addressing the needs of our community, the different ways in which their individual ministries are focused, some of them very differently. And I want to say hello to Brian in the chat room and to Chad in the chat room. And Brian is on lunch break. Have a wonderful lunch with us. And hello to Reverend Michael in the chat room. And it's good to see everyone. On Wednesday, we did not have a broadcast, and this is because Lady Lori and I journeyed to Atlanta to meet with Chancellor Stephanie and Sir Mike, and to bring back a number of things that they had very kindly stored for me for rather a long time. So we filled the Pugmobile to the brim, to the point that we had staves coming next to our heads, and came back that way. And we're now unpacking. The staves have been put in my closet here in the office. You can see the office is in general disarray. Also here in the office is a part of my morgue that had been in Atlanta all these years. And it is my collection of magazines from the 1980s, in some cases the 1970s, from the pagan press. And I'm so glad to see that they did in fact survive. It includes a number of things that might very well be preserved nowhere else. Some of these magazines had enough readership, I'm sure someone else has preserved them. Some of them I don't know. Some of them were only around for a few issues. Others went for a decade or more. But it's fascinating to see them again. And welcome Janet in the chat room. Welcome Bradley. And Bradley wishes us a happy Friday. Hello, Arlene. Bradley says that they just had a fun meditation with dragons and that they're enjoying our afternoon show. Thank you, Bradley. Hello to Lori in the chat room. And it's so good to see everyone. So this is what we were doing on Wednesday and Thursday. We're almost finished unpacking now. One of the things we brought back, well, not one of the things. We brought back a number of pieces of statuary that I have painted over the years. We brought back over 400 pieces of jewelry that were left to me by my mother. And some of these things are going to be offered as a way of helping to offset my moving costs back to Central Illinois. But more about that later. When my mother passed, she left 8 boxes of jewelry, which came down to over 400 pieces. 400 pieces and a few more were in Atlanta. There were also pieces here to start with. My mother had a great deal of jewelry, but that's because she had her own. She had my grandmother's. She had my great-grandmother's. She had a lot of jewelry. She also had a love for jewelry, as do I. Though she rarely actually wore any, only for very special occasions, whereas I throw it on for all purposes, because I consider it an artistic expression. So today, I will ask the people in the chat room, if you have anything you would particularly like to talk about, please feel free to ask in the chat room. I think I'm going to start talking about interviews. And as I was saying, one of the things I've enjoyed about this new series of interviews is to see how different leaders in this community approach their vocation. And of course, this has always been the case with interviews, but these are a little more in depth than many of the interviews I've done in the past. If you've followed Magic TV for the many years of its existence, you'll know that I have interviewed not everyone, but a vast number of different pagan leaders and also just ordinary people. But in speaking with those different leaders, that difference in vocation has always been something that shows. But I'm hoping in these new interviews to explore it more deeply. Um, and of course, the different personalities also. Some of the people we've interviewed over the years include Oberon Zell, Morning Glory Zell, Olivia Robertson, um, Margot Adler, Ruth Barrett, Deborah Blake, um, so many people. Um, Repeatedly interviewed with Selena Fox. We have some wonderful and in-depth interviews with her at Magic TV, some of them much longer than our ordinary interviews had been. We have interviews with everyone from Ryan Buell from Paranormal States um, to Don Michael Craig, the famous author. And it is fascinating to see how different people approach our community, what they do to enrich our community, how they interact with our community. And, it would be difficult to think of a wider disparity than Olivia Robertson on one hand, who grew up in a castle in Ireland as a British aristocrat, uh, and um, and Donald Michael Craig, who was quintessentially American. Both delightful, very different. Arlene says she would love to see both Margot Adler and Donald Michael Craig, and they are both on Magic TV. Um, and of course, they are both no longer giving interviews. So I'm very glad to have had the chance to interview them. And so many of these other people, Lady Olivia, is no longer in this physical world, no longer giving any new interviews. And I was very pleased to be able to interview her a number of times and in video and also in audio sources. Remarkable woman. One of the things I remember most strongly about my many years of interacting with Lady Olivia was that she really disliked the concept of the good old days. She would say that she hates to hear people talk about the good old days because for most people they just frankly were not that good. And she would talk about how in the part of Ireland where she grew up, almost everyone was desperately poor except for her family, who were aristocracy. And she would always remark on people riding around in ass carts, meaning donkey-driven carts, while her family had automobiles. And she felt that the world had improved tremendously by the evening of economic resources. And the last time that I had the privilege to speak to her, Ireland was in the midst of a great economic boom brought about by computer programming. And she was just delighted with the prosperity that had come to the country for everyone, not just for a few. She was not a believer in the few, despite having been born one of them. But I believe that characterized most of her family. She came from a very interesting family. She was a cousin of the great author whose name I know like I know my own and cannot think of at this moment. Um, Robert Graves. She was a cousin of Robert Graves, though she did remark that her mother did not allow them to associate with him because her mother was a little bit more old-fashioned and straight-laced. But very, very fascinating times. And I've enjoyed getting to interview all these people, and I'm hoping to interview many more. And I I think that it's going to be a continuing adventure, as it has been for these many years. I also am looking forward to going to many more events. And over the years, we've gone to a lot of events. The one we've gone to most is the St. Louis Pagan Picnic, which is a wonderful event, unless, of course, you're counting illustrations, which we have always been at as well. But after illustrations, the St. Louis Picnic, and we've been to many others. and I know that there are many more to come, and I find that quite fascinating too. Um, I think that what I'm saying in a roundabout way is that it's the variety of experience that makes life what it is. If we were all having the same experiences, if we all had exactly the same focus, if we all had exactly the same ideas, it would be a very different and much less rich world that we would be living in. And Arlene remarks that she missed me at Witches Fest last year. Yeah, I was not able to attend last year. And with my heart situation, I'm not expecting that I'll be able to be there this year, but you never know. I have enjoyed going to Witches Fest in New York City. It is a wonderful event. It is right in the heart of New York City, and always a lovely time. Lovely people put it on. It's good to see so many old friends when I am able to go. I think that the Most Reverend Phoenix will probably be there this year. And I have been attending Witches Fest USA since its inception, up until just this last couple, because of a variety of things, and I've always enjoyed it. And that's one of the many fond memories I have of all these years of doing journalistic work, because I mean that is what I'm doing as part of Magic TV, and it has been a long and fascinating trip. I often speak about the Fellowship of Isis conventions, which, being back in the Midwest, I may be able to attend again this year. I had been attending them since their inception, um, mostly up until the death of Archpriestess Dina, um, which was really a great shock and sadness for the Chicago ICN community. And she had been remarkable in her approach to the ICN liturgy. Every year at the ICN convention, she would mount an ICN mystery play as a full-blown theatrical production. And I was almost always in them, and they were an amazing thing to take part in. Um, Lots of rehearsals, and then of course it all came together at the last minute. Sometimes not the way anticipated. And hello to Rebecca in the chat room. And Rebecca says she really enjoys the live broadcast. I'm so glad to hear that. Um, as I was saying, we've been unloading things that we've brought home today, so I'm perhaps a little less focused than I would like to be, but hopefully you'll bear with me. Um, Here is a feather that fell off of a staff in transition. I'm going to have to repair it, and also a butterfly. And I'm sure that those of you who have been with us for a long time will know immediately who made the staff in question. It's a bitterwind. And I will have to replace those two parts of it for it to be whole again, but that will be fairly simple. But you know, some of these things are fragile, and you have to be careful in transporting them. And even if you are, things can still happen. But the nice thing is they can be repaired. And with Lady Bitterwind's artwork, she actually liked for people to make changes to it if they were moved to do so. So in replacing the feather, I will, being me, I will replace it as she had it. Um, but it's not something that she would have felt bad about. She felt that her artwork that she was doing toward the end of her life had to do with the art of placement. And if it happened to evolve over time, she was fine with that. And often she would evolve her own artworks over time. We had a piece called Death Shall Have No Dominion after the famous poem. And it was a skeleton mounted on a macrame galaxy with a metal sun and moon. And there were various other aspects to this, but she decided to augment it with stars. And to do this, she got a piece of silver garland, um, obviously intended for the midwinter holidays. And she interwove this with the skeleton and the macrame years after she'd originally completed the artwork, and it took on a whole new character thanks to this. And she loved when that happened. Bitterman was an amazing woman. She was very much a Discordian. And for those of you who maybe haven't noticed, there is a certain Discordian streak that runs through the Corellian tradition. And Lady Gloria, Lady Bitterwind, Sir Edward have all been upholding that streak for many years. Um, and it's important, I think, because so often older traditions become fossilized, but that has not happened to us. And I think that Discordian energy taught us how important it was to continue to grow and evolve. And hello to Kazan, hello to Janet. Um, Janet remarks that Lady Bitterwind loved giving items new life, and she totally did. That was her great joy. And Bitterwind and the others I mentioned looked at things differently than many people do. And the value of that is immense. So often people see things in a certain way. And as time goes on, that way needs to evolve, and they cannot allow themselves to do so. And I think that the influence of Lady Bitterwind, Lady Gloria, Sir Edward really helped us to keep growing and not to fossilize in that way. And Janet remarks that Lady Bitterwind is a kindred with her heart, and yes, indeed. She was a lovely person. I knew her since I was 12 or 13 years old, so she was very much part of my family. She was considered an adopted family member. And we had a lot of fun. She used to take Lady Crystal and I out to science fiction conventions and widen our horizons. She widened our horizons a great deal. She was very good at widening horizons. Lady Bitterwind, she passed on the weekend of the 40th anniversary of Lady Crystal and myself as first priesthood of the Corellian tradition, which was it was absolutely remarkable in itself. And it was on Beltane Day that she passed. I say it was the 40th anniversary. I should say it was the 40th Jubilee. The anniversary was actually in February. The Jubilee happened over Beltane weekend. A remarkable event. And it was very poignant. Not only that Lady Bitterwind passed at that time, but how we found out about that. And I've discussed that elsewhere, so I'm not going to go through it at this moment. But it was very metaphysically significant. And it's interesting, when you are in a magical path, you will see things that display magical synchronicity in amazing ways. And people who aren't on a magical path may see the same things, but they usually don't accept them. They find some way to talk themselves out of the idea that they're witnessing something important. It's just a coincidence is the most favorite excuse. And hello to Lilith in Holland. Good to see you, Lilith. I think I've remarked before, I first met Lilith in person in the UK when we went there for lustration. Lovely person. We have so many lovely people. And so I'm looking for some people who can help me with some translations. It's not a big translation. Oh, and hello to Diane. It's good to see you, Diane. It's so nice to have so many people joining this broadcast. It warms my heart, and so many good friends, and other people who are new friends, and I love that. So I'm looking for people to help me with a translation of just 3 paragraphs into German, Swedish, Portuguese, and I believe I have the others covered. There will also be Spanish and Greek. Um, it basically is an let me just take a moment and check and see if Dutch is one of the languages that we are working with at present. Um, no, but if you're if Lilith, you're if you're interested, I mean, in doing some Dutch translation, we could certainly use your help. Um, can I recite the paragraph? Ryan asks. Um, I don't know that anyone wants to hear me recite the whole thing, but it basically is an introduction to the five mystic secrets. Thank you, Lilith. I will be in touch. Um, and what I'm doing is I am working with our translations of the five mystic secrets, and I have written a new introduction. As I say, only 3 paragraphs, so not tremendous work for anyone. But anyone interested in helping, it would be greatly appreciated. And we would love to expand the translations into many different languages, more than what we have. When we went to the Parliament of the World's Religions in Australia, in Melbourne, in 2009, Ryan says it has to be in Latin. We'd love to have it in Latin. But for 2009, we had, among other literature, What is Wicca in 19 different languages. And we were very proud to have managed that. And we would like to see materials in as many languages as possible. I'm also hoping to put it into the Corellian font. But one thing at a time, and we're moving forward as fast as we can. But Corellian Publishing is hoping to bring out books in many languages as we go forward. We have books in both Greek and Spanish waiting to be completed, and those should be coming out fairly soon, this year certainly. I mean, obviously, there's a lot to be done, but we are doing it. We are moving forward. And as always, I will take a moment to plug Reverend Don's Super Omnibus here in reverse screen. But the Super Omnibus is now available in a paperback version, which you can find at CorellianPublishing.com. There are still a few of the collectible hardback versions available. If you're interested, please send me an email. And Lilith asked me to send her the material, and she will work on it. Thank you so much. And I'm making a note as we speak, because if I don't write it down, it didn't happen. Or at least that's how my memory works some days. So I've got it right in front of me now, and I will certainly do that later this evening. Brian asks if there are plans to do another printing of the Infinite Tarot at some point. Yes, there are. Hopefully later this year. And I will take a moment to plug that, even though it's not available right now. The Infinite Tarot. And if you watch Tarot Thursdays here at Pagan World TV, Reverend Mary always uses the Infinite Tarot, and when I join once a month, I do as well. We have a lot of things in Corellian Publishing coming down the pike. A lot of things in Pagan World TV coming down the pike. So if you watch, you will find many fascinating new things coming. I believe things are being filmed this very weekend, which will ultimately come to Pagan World TV. and many different projects that will come to fruition. And and Brian says that the deck is on their wish list, especially with the addition of the suit of lamps. And thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. You know, when I created the Tarot of Hecate, it was revolutionary. It's not now, but that was 30 years ago. Um, the diverse approach to the characters, um, the addition of the extra suit and cards. At that time, it was very unusual, but fate did not permit it to be brought out at that time. But people have loved it since it has been brought out, and I'm very gratified by that. And, you know, I was watching during my last time on Tarot Thursday a couple of weeks ago, as we were drawing the cards, and I was thinking, wow, I love those colors. Well, I should. I colored them, but it is, in my opinion, a good comment that I still like them. Um, and Bradley says it's a lovely deck, and they're enjoying going through the book that discusses the cards. And good, I'm very glad. We the story of that deck is certainly not one that we haven't remarked on, but its continuing evolution kind of speaks to what I was saying before, because it started as a simple black and white tarot deck with an extra suit and some extra cards that came up to 100. Later became a color deck that we actually were able to publish. Now has all of the Infinite Throw expansions. Brian remarks on having the ancestors, the runes, and the major arcana, which make up for not being able to have the full deck at this time. And yes, it's been quite delightful to get these out into the world, and I'm hoping we'll be able to offer all of them again, perhaps later in the year. Some of them are still available at CorellianPublishing.com, some of the expansion decks. But we do have a dwindling supply of those, but we are looking to have a new order sometime during the year. And but, you know, as with so many things, it must come in its time. I think I'd have to say the hardest part, one of the hardest parts of life itself, is that things cannot be instantaneous. We have to work to get them done. And if only we could click our fingers and it would be here. But you know, that is what the astral plane is like, not what this plane is like. And it is, in many ways, the journey rather than the destination that matters here, because it's the journey that gives us transformation. I believe that's what this life is largely about. It's our way of transforming ourselves, of achieving growth that we can only achieve through involution. And if you remember the first degree lessons, or perhaps you have not had them, involution is the idea that when we come into the physical world, we narrow our focus from the expansive nature of our soul to just this life and just the specific things in this life. And that by doing this, we give ourselves tools to grow and change that we could never employ with the full knowledge of our spiritual selves. And that is what I believe this world is for. And hello to the Dusty Dud. Welcome. We have come to the end of our half hour, so I'm going to close with a prayer. I want to thank you all for joining me, and I'll be back on Monday. And let us have our prayer. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we ask you to help us to know what is our own and what is not, to embrace that which is right for us and to release that which is not, to know those aspects of experiences we should adopt and carry forward, and those we should leave behind. Help us to know these great secrets of life, beloved ones. And Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you, and may you be blessed now and always. May you be blessed as well until next time. We will see you then.